Alright, welcome folks. Today we are going to be diving into esoteric occult science and having a deeper understanding of the Hermetic principle, as within, so without, and learning how the law of analogy can help us understand all things related to transcendental, physical, biochemical, astrological, or even alchemical, and understand how all things are mirrored within everything is mirrored within and of itself, because everything is a mirror and a reflection of the one supreme self, which is part and parcelized into the multitude of beings. That's why in the Old Testament it's always talking about the multitude, or told Abraham that he will have lots of seeds, right? And it's talking about the stars, and it's talking about all the populace of beings, right? Because when we're reading the esoteric occult books and the holy scriptures, we have to take into account the anagogical interpretation, which is the interpretation from the top down, understanding from the causal plane perspective. The anagogical perspective is your ability to look down into the mystery in and of itself, and to be able to interpret and distill and extract vital information through the various spheres. In the last video that we tried to put out, it was we were explaining the various rungs of Jacob's ladder, and how there's the 7 astral rungs and then the 3 superior spiritual rungs, and how our state of consciousness within our rungs and the ladder of our inner body, which is the spinal column, right? The spinal column relates to the shelves or the steps or the rungs of the inner inherent being of the self, and that directly relates to the spiritual ladder, or the anagogical ladder, where the soul is looking at souls descending and ascending into physical and out of physical incarnation, because there's always a vortex of souls coming into physical manifestation and sprouting as seeds and new beings with new ideals and new, depending on the angles of the planets. And there's also people leaving the physical casings, leaving the sheaths. The swords are leaving the sheaths and have now prepared to enter the superior worlds through the law of distillation and the law of density, right? The physical realm is the negative polarity of spirit. Therefore, it is the most dense aspect of spirit, and is light made into the sense of physicality, which creates a time spectrum, which means that we have to kind of point A to point B, and things have to happen in a logical, linear manner. That's why when you tap into higher states of consciousness and you start seeing things from a non-linear, logical manner, and start interpreting intuitional symbols from the right brain, the subconscious mind, which reflects from the higher archetypal realms, then you actually see how life is actually not linear and logical. It's actually a beautiful mix of both. It's just that we're trained to only see the linear logical. We're trained to only see from the left hemisphere of the brain, and that's why in the Old Testament we are told to leave the left brain to the right brain, to cross the Red Sea into the Promised Land, because the left brain is ruled by the Pharaoh of logic, analytics, of circumference, of understanding where everything is placed in the physical realm and how we should live in the physical realm. It's very materialized. Whereas the spiritual aspect of consciousness, whereas Moses, who leads the inner archetypes up and out of the bondage spectrum of Egypt, or the left brain, the left hemisphere, and you cross over to the Red Sea, that's biochemic, that's astrophysiology. Whereas anagogically, you would interpret that as the souls leaving the physical realm, being Egypt, and leaving into the spirit world of eternity, back into the Promised Land. So today we're going to be exploring the law of analogy, the law of similarity, the law of correspondence, as within, so without, to be able to understand all esoteric occult science across the board, and be able to come to a common understanding of where all of this stuff comes from and how we can use it to elevate our inner self. So the first archetype that comes to mind in esoteric science is the eternal scriptures written in the sky, because the as within, so without shows that everything that you see on the outside is a symbol and has a virtue and a likeness and correspondence to an inner state within you, as well as an idea and a being and archetypal illustration on the higher realms. So everything that we imagine is actually something that we are grasping. As the ancient Neoplatonists mentioned, that it's not that man that is inventing all these archetypal images and things, it is that he is able to expand his awareness to receive the divine images that are reflected on the pool of the subconscious mind. As the conscious mind becomes individualized and becomes enlightened and self-awakened, it's able to see the inner reflection of itself and its creator and all things imprinted in the physical dimension around it. That's when you understand that everything around you in the physical realm has a spiritual, astral correspondence, as well as it being something that exists on the mental plane as well. And we'll get into that. So, as we can see, the eternal blueprint of man and woman, the human body mapped in the heavens, the psychological aspects and physical aspects relating to each zodiac. I wanted to get into zodiacal alchemy and zodiacal meditation, where you understand that the body corresponds to the divine cosmic intelligent map of God, and how God has labored to distribute the 12 intelligences among the 12 angles of light through the 4 seasons and the 12 zodiac, and how every season and every day and every year has a new feeling, because as we enter a new sign, we feel a different type of way, because our inner astral weather affects our circumstances and our frame of mind and our modus operandi more than the physical weather. We can see that even on a cloudy day, we can feel happy, energetic, and Jupiterian, or even when we feel that it's very nice outside, we can still feel doom and gloomy, kind of like Saturn. So the inner weather is actually more effectual on our consciousness and behavior than the higher planes in and of themselves. And we have to understand that as we focus on the various different parts of our body, like for example, in Aries in the springtime, we focus on the pineal gland, drawing the energy of Aries, the ram, fire, cardinal energy, into the top of the head of the cerebrum to activate the pineal gland, because Aries rules the head, and that corresponds to the cosmic on the higher planes as well. So when we focus in on the physical body at a particular point, aka between the eyes, Brahman's cave, the cerebrum, or the throat chakra here, when we're chanting, or the heart, we can enter these various dimensions. We have various different elevator openings within our body that we can access, but we have to understand that we can only access one at a time, and we have to distribute the energy accordingly. So we can learn how to cultivate these 12 intelligences within our body by understanding that each one of these rule a particular system in the body and an intelligence bestowed from God itself. So God has the 12 intelligences and the 7 forces. That's why we always hear the 12 months of the year, and we always hear we have the 12 months of the year, and we have the 7 days of the week, right? We have the 7 layers of the astral plane, the 12 consciousness, which are the soundboards, and the 7 planets. So each planet rules one of the levels of the astral. And the astral is directly connected to the causal plane, which all that information vortexes down into the physical realm to be interpreted by the conscious mind through seeking the reflection of the subconscious mind. So when you meditate, your goal is to actually come into a certain point of your conscious centers, whether that be the mind, which is more logic, thinking, conceptualizing; the throat, more of hearing, sensing; the heart, more of feeling, sentience, right, and so on and so forth. When the lower chakra is right when you want to ground. They would say, if you want to ground, when you hear about yoga in the West, they would say, how do you ground? Oh, you focus on your root chakra, right? So you're focused on your root chakra to ground. You're focused on your heart chakra to enter a sphere of consciousness on the tree of life. The tree of life is mapped on the human body. And if you take a look here, the zodiac, each one represents a different aspect on the human body, which corresponds to Adam Kadmon, which is the archetypal man and woman that was created. That's what we're creating the image of. That is the pathway of the sun. That is the cosmic organization that's always been. It's the figure of man. That's why Yod-He Vod-He is in the figure of man. and that's why every symbol in the arc of humanity has always been related to the cross and the vernal the various solar journey and the human body, because the human body has always been a representation and map of the divine heavenly man, which we're created in the image of. Just like in the East, when they say, Krishna is a supreme personality of Godhead, all things come from it, or Brahman. In the West, we have various different terms, but it's always been a personalized aspect, because we understand that what we are, we inherit from something that created us, a causal intelligence, a perfect mix of illustrious love and wisdom combined to produce knowledge. That knowledge that's produced is referred to as the Christos. That Christos is the organizing principle, or the personal aspect of God, right? The complete focal point of love and wisdom manifested. Now, the Christos is named in different ways, because the Christ has always been and always has been. It's reflected and named in different terms and different traditions. Nonetheless, it's the spark within all beings. It's Vishnu, it's the supreme Brahman, it's the Krishna, it's the Christ, it's the Logos, the Word or the Verb. It's the holy breath, or the divine, the first emanation from the causal plane, that intelligent causal being that floated upon the waters in Genesis, anagogically speaking, of the soul that hovers above the nervous system and the waters of the body, because when the soul descends into the physical body, it develops from the bottom up. So as you develop from the bottom up, your nervous system starts producing in a way that you have to perfect that nervous system. That's the tree of life. And the Christos is the seed that's planted within the body that produces the nervous system that allows the fruits to bear. And those fruits are the eternal virtues that you take over to the next plane once you basically come into this spiritual factory of elements. Okay, you have to start looking at this physical realm as a domain where you are living within the four elements and have to go through the trials and tribulations of the four elements, which are none other than the archetypal personalities and aspects of the Creator himself. So earth, water, air, and fire are the physical representations of spiritual, divine, invisible principles. They are the reflection of psychophysical principles. For example, when we talk about the alchemy and we're working with water, we're not necessarily just talking about physical water. We're talking about the waters of the emotion, the waters of the subconscious mind. When we're talking about earth, we're not necessarily talking about body, but we're also talking about our mind. Seeing a part of our mind is earthly mind, the atom mind, the mind made of clay. For the mind or atom made of clay and dust shall return to dust. It's the spirit within that returns to the higher realms. So this physical body is the sarcophagus of the mummies, right? We are deposited. This is the tomb or the womb or the shelter of the soul, as the Neoplatonists put it. And you can read that in the book Alvin Boyd Kuhn, Your Blood is the Red Sea, as well as the key to the lost key to scriptures, where he explains how the physical body is the casing or the shelter or the mummification of the soul. The soul had to embark on a journey of drowning into it in of itself, filling down to the negative polarity of the physical realm, to become fully individualized and express a true affinity for knowledge of good and evil, and to pick good on the court of good and good for goodness sake alone. And once the soul understands to live for goodness sake alone, he understands the Christ aspect of God, the good principle, or the organizing principle. And one who activates this organizing principle, Krishna in the heart, or as the Hindus say, Vishnu, or as Christ is pointing to his heart, when you activate the good principle within and you seek the eternal good and the eternal truth, and you're able to step back and observe yourself from a separate standpoint and understand that you are spiritually eternal but within a physical body, and that physical ego is haphazard to mistakes and routines and habits and all different types of things of the flesh, of the negative polarity. It's the reflection or shadow of the Creator, and it has to be illumined so the light appears and the darkness vanishes, because as it says, the darkness cannot coexist with the light. So when we understand that the sound is God's creative aspect, that we can rise above the duality of the elements, right? We're always fighting in the clash of fire, earth, water, and air. Either our minds are sprawled through air, or we feel earthy, we feel trapped in our body, we feel as if we're trapped in a cage. Or let's say we are our fire element is out of whack and we are feeling impulsive and unable to fully control our impulses, or our water, which are emotions or subconscious mind. Then we begin to understand that we need to find something that is the higher form of the elements. We have to find a higher octave, a higher approach, and that approach is understanding how to tap into the hyper element of sound, because sound transcends earth, water, air, and fire. Sound is the creator of all things. Vibration creates the form and the sacred geometry that forms all of these ideas. And all of these things start as ideas and ideals in the higher archetypal realms and causal planes. Only in the astral plane they're given concrete form to exist in the physical realm. And that's how we have to understand that things manifest through sound in the physical realm. And everyone has a specific keynote sound that plays within their psyche that they can, if they silence their mind and they shut off all output and turn inward, they can access this inner divine holy sound within their consciousness. And that cerebral spinal fluid will come up into the higher cavities of the brain and start activating those higher senses. So we understand that the 12 signs of the zodiac correspond to 12 intelligences of the body, as well as the 12 cranial nerves. And the solar journey that takes place within the body is the same that takes place in the heavens. The heaven is an eternal representation of what takes place in not only the mind of the universe, but also the mind of our individual psyches. And we have to understand that we play a very important, vital role in this, and we have to basically play the shopkeeper of God. We have to be the custodians of the truth, or whatever purpose we're called to. Some are more fit for physical duties. Some are more fit for psychic. Some are more fit for aerial duties. So we have to align with how we can benefit people the most, by understanding how we fit into the pattern of things. Because when you're on this journey and you understand synchronicities, you'll begin to notice the divine patterns within things. And pattern recognition is a super important key to being able to understand the law of analogy and correspondence. Because the law of correspondence analogy helps you open up the divine book of nature and essentially allows you to be able to read the book of nature. Because everything in the physical realm that we see, even the sun setting, is a book in and of itself, showing that when the physical body dies, it still rises. Because when we die, like the sun in the west, when it west, we rise again in the east. Because the sun appears anagogically, poetically. We have to start seeing things from a more poetic standpoint, and then we can actually absorb not only the physical health benefits of the sun, but also the spiritual virtuous benefits of the sun by understanding it from a mental and also astral level of feeling, right? Most people are only operating logical, linear, and only seeing things for face value when they're not seeing the face behind the sun. That's why when we were kids, we always drew the sun with the face, because we knew it was placed there by a very kind and caring intelligence. And as we've all heard through Walter Russell, the secret of creation is in the wave. And understanding the law of rhythm can actually save you, because you'll understand that things kind of, teeter-totter. Sometimes things get rough and things get really hard and we go through challenges, but we know that there's a brighter day ahead, because we know that that low slump here in the line of the sine wave, that coming down into matter, right, from spirit down into matter, refines us so that when we leave matter, we will be on a new level, on a higher level, because the sine wave continuously progresses. And this also helps you on your day-to-day, because a lot of people feel like, they feel like they're in their, hit rock bottom. But everyone knows that hitting rock bottom can be a trampoline to help you access more higher plateaus of consciousness. As we were talking about Jacob's ladder, there's various rungs within the psyche and astral. And as you refine your inner vision and you refine your consciousness and your self-awareness, you're able to stand on these various different rungs and be able to interpret the mysteries from different perspectives that allow you to see how everything is intelligently made in a way where you're always guided. You're always guided by the causal plane. There's always something that's going to be set in your path. If you're aware of it, you'll notice that you'll have more synchronicities. More synchronicities will appear because you're tapped into the cosmic group. You're out of the herd mind group or the soul group consciousness, which we're all propelled to live or coexist with. But once you start tapping into a higher order, then you're able to come out of that kind of hive mind and start individualizing. Because remember, the age of Aquarius, the main proximity is for people to gravitate to hive mind, right? In age of Pisces, it was all about institutions and organizing groups, whereas in the age of Aquarius, everyone can be a star. And not only that, everyone has access to the knowledge, but also it's people tend to become attributed to hive mind mentality. So, as we travel through the sine wave or the sin of Eve, we understand that we take part in the cosmic dance and the cosmic cycle and have to experience the good and the bad. And basically, experience is to create a modus of preference within. Without the preferences, without the ability to interpret right from wrong, without the ability to come into the realm of duality from the causal plane to experience being in a physical human being, you would be incapable of making choices for eternity. So think of this as a spiritual factory where you are refining your spiritual nervous system and where you are aligning with the basic rhythm of the seasons within and without. Because as we spoke of before, your inner astral weather is much more, creates a huge effect on your state of being. So we have to understand how we can actually shift our inner astral weather if it's running amok. If we're feeling melancholic or gloomy or feeling overexuberated, we have to be able to toggle on and off these various different energies that are coming in from the planets. Because every day we're bombarded by the 7 planets giving us different channels to feed on. We have to choose which channels to feed on. We have to choose that we're going to be channeling into the Mercury, channeling into Mars, channeling into Jupiter. We have to decide which type of planet we're going to be doing. If you're feeling gloomy, you have to change it to Jupiter, optimism. Okay? You have to temper with opposites. You have to play the planets against each other. When you're feeling this type of way, switch it up. Try to see things from another perspective. It just takes sometimes a simple mind shift, a paradigm shift, to change your paradigm, to see things from a different perspective. Because that is essentially the art of changing how you're going to react. Because basically, one of the most important things that dictates your behavior is your belief system. And that's why the elite black magicians, essentially, are trying to hijack your belief system and make you believe something that isn't true. Because if they can get you to believe in something that isn't true, then essentially they can hack you and make you be exactly just that. So the seasons mimicking the soul's descent into matter is one of the most beautiful symbols in the world. We grow up as children seeing the the seasons. So our first time we see snow or winter, or the first time we see spring when flowers are sprouting, or summer when the sun is raging, we are able to we take it at face value. But as we grow up and understand the mysteries, we can see that each one of those 4 seasons relates to a specific part of the soul's journey. And from one direction, you can see winter as the soul descending into matter. Another way you can see winter is the soul dying, physical body dying. One way you can see summer is the most exalted space, time in spiritual realm after this life. Another way you can see summer is physical maturity in the physical realm. So you actually have to toggle the seasons depending on your anagological view. Because if you're looking at it from the perspective of the physical, and you are saying, okay, the winter represents the soul descending into physical matter. Okay, well, it also represents the soul, physical body dying. But if you're looking at it from that perspective, then you would see that spring represents the resurrection of the soul and the everlasting life, that what dies shall be risen and lives again. And that's the mystery of the Christic principle. That's the whole mystery of all the esoteric traditions. We're all fearfully and wonderfully made to be able to excite the psyche enough to understand the cryptogram. So what is a cryptogram? A cryptogram is an image that conveys a meaning higher than in and of itself. An image with a hidden meaning, because cryptic means secret and gram is picture. So a cryptogram is a secret revealed through a picture. And as we can see, all of the ancient scriptures can be made into pictures that reflect the teaching of that book or of that chapter. And that's because the cryptograms operate on a higher level. Only the higher mind can interpret and extract information from cryptograms. And that's why the seers and revealers of the ancient wisdom compiled the cryptograms, so that we can have a beautiful reflection of the divine order and divine laws compiled in images that would always be everlasting in existence, because the stories can't be corrupted, because they're constructed in a particular way, because they utilize the keys of analogy and correspondence, and they understand the law of similarity. So they understand how to make a story perfectly fit with the soul's journey and the spiritual evolution of man and woman's consciousness, and the divine epic plan of creator, created, and what is to be created, in a beautiful way that makes it seem like it's a story about a family running around in the desert. This and supernatural things take place and whatnot, but when you understand that each character represents a various spiritual aspect within your consciousness and your psyche, then the door opens up, because with the law of analogy, everything will be changed. Just like when your music will never, I heard recently, someone explained music's not the same for a musician, right? When you listen to music as a musician, it sounds different. You'll never hear it the same again. And that's the same with the mysteries. Once you open up to the mysteries, you'll never see a sunset or a season change the same again. It'll never just be a season changing for the sake of a season changing due to some random act of some cosmic Big Bang, but instead it will be a meaningful shift in consciousness, a meaningful shift of awareness. And that's why seasons have always been so celebrated, because they're divine symbols of the book of life that show exactly where we're headed, and basically give us the hope of the glory of our eternal immortal progression. Now, the higher order that created all things separates itself into divine love and wisdom. Now, divine love and wisdom are the two principles that create the entire scheme of life. Now, the Divine Mother is said to be the personal caring aspect of God, love, whereas the fatherly aspect more wisdom. And when they come together, they produce knowledge, which is the child. Jesus says, many will perish due to lack of knowledge. And to seek and you shall find. And what you're seeking is knowledge, and not just knowledge for the sake of knowledge, but knowledge based on the perfect balance of love and wisdom. So we have the mysteries of Lucifer, which is the phosphorus within the nervous system. And that phosphorus in the nervous system is what allows the consciousness to become self-reflective. So it's called the light bearer because the phosphorus the phosphorus is what lights up the self-illumined, self-conscious aspect of the mind. The phosphorus within the body is the self-illumined principle. So those who conserve the sexual energy produce more phosphorus in their mind, which are able to have more self-reflective capabilities. And that could be a symbol of enlightenment, because when the higher mind or the higher intellect, Lucy, Lucifer, Sophia, wisdom, etc., it can become corrupted. And that corruption becomes Satan, by the logical mind taking what the higher intellect perceives as divine wisdom and illuminating truth and becoming egotistical or prideful, which basically says, I'm taking this wisdom for myself and I'm operating it on the physical plane in order to maintain on the physical plane. So that Christic principle that descends into the body is the polarity of that, because what the phosphorus is descending into the body, illuminating, falling from heaven, the Christ is rising through the soul, being acquainted with the four elements of the body and having to go through the trials of earth, water, air, and fire, as well as the four directions in and of themselves. So the higher principle of the universe basically has to embark on a journey of awakening the inner sun within each individual soul or representative or physical being on every dimension, not just the physical. There's also citizens of the astral realm and the causal plane and the spiritual dimension, and the whole goal is to awaken the inner sun within. That's basically the whole point of the seasons changing, of the, summer, spring, winter, fall. We have to go through it every year. We live here, 80 to 120 years. We have to experience the 4 seasons, the 7 days of the week, the 12 months. We have to understand that it's trying to whisper something to us. It's trying to whisper a higher truth, a more subtle reality. And once we gain access to that through the law of analogy and through the law of correspondence, we will be able to apply it to our life and be able to actually activate our inner lantern, our inner sun, which can help kind of propel the darkness, be able to see, especially in the times of darkness. And as we acquire more light and more cognition and more self-awareness, then the secrets of the astral plane begin to be revealed. One of the biggest revelations I feel like I felt is that instead of the astral plane being like somewhere out there that I need to go into, that the astral plane is actually within. I have to turn myself around and go within myself to enter somewhere that is not here. And anyone who's experienced being in a body somewhere else that's not in the physical plane will have direct proof and gnosis that they can exist in actual vehicles in more subtle planes and more subtle realities. And that all the subtle planes and subtle realities have been mapped out in the tarot. The tarot cards represent the various pathways up and down the physical and spiritual realm. So there's the 22 major arcana, each one representing a various step within the Sephiroth, the tree of life. You have the tree of life, and then you have all of the pathways relating to the tarot. And as the great esotericists say, the keys to the tarot open up the laws, open up the knowledge of all things, and not just divining through tarot, but seeing it as a cosmic anagogical map to the whole clockwork of the universal mind, and being to understand how to access it and go into those places within yourself, and how they correspond to a various part of your body, and how a various part of your body corresponds to a various feeling, and how a various feeling corresponds to a various frequency that you can tap into and tune into and be able to transmit and receive information. The goal of the alchemist was always to refine the 7 planets by separating them and working on them individually. If you had an issue with Mars or Jupiter or Venus, you wanted to isolate it and work on it separately. Once the 7 metals were purified, you'd put them back together again. So you separate them, purify them, recombine them, and then you activate each stage. There's 7 stages of phases of alchemy and 12 stages of alchemy. So within those 12 stages of alchemy, there's 7 transformations that take place. So it's very beautiful how even that aligns. And I'd say that that's our Western yogic heritage, understanding alchemy and how to read alchemical symbolism more intrinsically to be able to understand how the physical laboratory of the body and the universe correspond to the refinement of your soul and who you're going to be here and hereafter for eternity. But first you have to learn how to manage the waters of life. Recommend everyone read the book by Albert Boyd Kuhn, Your Blood is the Red Sea, because it shows how the human body is the Red Sea you have to cross, and how the physical body is the Noah's Ark, and how walking upon the waters of life means just that the soul had to descend into this realm of the physical, of the waters of life, and experience loss and gain, and to experience love and hate, experience pain and pleasure, and experience loss and grief. But at the end of the day, we take up our staff, we stand erect, and we conquer, and we walk upon the waters of life, and we acquire that ability. And when someone acquires this ability, what does that look like? It looks like someone who is unaffected, who's unproblematic, who doesn't have any hang-ups or issues, quarries or hankerings. Someone who seems to walk on water. Some say walk on air. Some even say walk on fire, because they all relate to a various stage of perception. And that stage of perception has to do with where your angels and impulses are coming from within this ladder. Because Jacob beheld a ladder set upon the earth, and the top it reached to heaven, and behold, the Lord stood above it. Because when you lay your head upon the stone and looking up, it's not necessarily saying you're looking up at your spine. It's saying your spine is a metaphor or a gateway to the various planes of existence that exist, as above, so below. And these are the various planes that exist to heaven. You could say earth is at the bottom if you want. The earth is in the middle or the bottom. Regardless, you'll still have lots of rungs to get to before you reach the brain. And the brain is up, heaved up, heaven. And this is the main mystery of occult anatomy, to see the physical body as a spiritual correspondence map of the divine mind of God. And we have to come here and learn direction. East, west, north, south, summer, spring, fall, winter. We have to understand and undergo the trials of summer, the hot days of King Herod, when the sun's in summer, and killing off the firstborn children. And the Bible is talking about the sun destroying the harvest, destroying the firstborn seeds of harvest, and the sun running amok in summer, because the sun is not always the hero in the books. The protagonist in the book and the hero are both the sun, because the sun takes place in different forms. Sometimes the sun's King Herod in the book. Sometimes the sun is the good principle, when it's the Lamb of God in spring, resurrection, right? So that sun and that solar principle comes in, it says it comes in like a lion, goes out like a lamb. That's an astrological phase. We have to understand how to appreciate old alchemical art, because it was used as a mandalic meditation. And when we take a look at it, we can actually look and learn a few things by letting it seep into the subconscious mind, and not necessarily looking for a logical explanation, but letting a nudge or an internal feeling or proximity, and utilizing and exercise your intuition to pick up signals from the archetypal realm. So as you can see, you have the sun. It's refined. It's being refined. It's not at its highest point. 7 flowers, 7 chakras, the 7 spheres. You have the shadow self, the person on the path, and then you have the sidekick intuition, Jiminy Cricket. That is some call it the spirit guide or the divine guide. It's the part of you that has access to higher knowledge, knows what's going to happen before it's going to happen, basically. It's always been with you. Everyone has it. They call it, intuition, or it's just everyone has these beautiful mystical functions within them, and the ancients were very good at putting them in pictorials. You're always working with the 4 angels or the 4 directions: earth, water, air, and fire. Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, or Uriel. The various colors corresponding to different tones and modes, and various different frequencies that you're able to tune into to acquire knowledge of air, to acquire knowledge of fire. What is the intelligence you can extract from the archetype of fire? What is the knowledge you can extract from the archetype of water? The ancient alchemists saw the elements as psycho-spiritual elements. And there comes a time where our inner flight, our inner bird, our inner flight system to be able to travel through the astral skies is chained. And the only way to unchain that is to take the leap of faith through focus, will, and intention, and be able to make the jump, because it's your lower mind and ego which is holding on to the bird. You have the higher sage, Merlin, or hermit archetype, which is the higher mind, which is guiding you to basically explain to you that if the bird continues to fly, this creature will fall off the cliff and drag it down. So the only way that it can be unleashed or unlatched is by the higher mind itself. As in the Bible it says, the lower mind is in scrutiny to the carnal laws, and the higher mind is in scrutiny to the laws of God. So only from a higher force can the ego be unchained. So you have to create a neutral force to attract that active principle, and allow the active spiritual principle to create a new impulse, a new neuroplastic impulse, to create a new behavior, a new change in direction. So instead of doing this when you're falling asleep, you do that, and boom, experience the astral vision. The best way to start activating this process is working with the archetypal intelligence of Aries, especially starting in the springtime, because Aries is the first cardinal fire, representing the cerebrum and the central nervous system, and the cell salt potassium phosphate. All of this relates to the first intelligence of God. It was the one that created Solomon's temple, Hiram Abiff. hierarchy above, and it comes from above because the cardinal Aryan energy utilizes at the cerebrum, which is the first part of the body that's created. So when you work with Aries, you're working with the cardinal fire, and you're igniting the pineal gland with the seasonal impulses from the planetary angles, and you're drawing in that energy into the pineal gland while vibrating the mantra E. E. When you do the mantra E, you're vibrating this upper part of your skull, and that vibration is creating a resonance with the pineal gland. And when you combine that with the intention of the seasonal energies that are coming in March and April of Aries at 6 a.m., and you utilize all the correspondences, you're able to create a magical chain of correspondence. And that magical chain of correspondence energizes the practice because you're using the left and right brain, love and wisdom, knowledge and wisdom and understanding to produce a coherent result. You can see that the cosmic symbols are not just made up at random, but the animal that they decided to represent as Aries was chosen also because of the shape that it takes place in the head. One of the most interesting things I learned on my journey was the occult anatomy, and to see that the Lamb of God, or the biblical, zodiacal sign of Aries, it's in the shape of the human brain. I mean, that's just amazing. It mirrors itself so beautifully. And then you start to add on, what does Aries mean? What does the ram mean? What does the planet mean? What does the, Mars? Why is the energy cardinal fire? What does that mean? How does that behave? And now you'll understand some of the New Testament a little bit better when they're all, everyone pick up their things and follow the Lord impulsively. Going out on a whim. The tarot card, the Fool. Because it's all pointing to the energy of Aries, the start. And I think that'll be it for tonight. I wanted to get back into live streaming. I hope you guys enjoyed just kind of this introduction to the laws of correspondence and laws of analogy. And there'll definitely be more to come. So appreciate everyone for being here. Just want to see if there's any questions or anything like that.
I guess I do have a couple of questions that I did manage to think of. Someone might who's beginning on their journey here.
Yeah,
so
sounds good.
All right, so one good question would be is, so with all these books and all these sources of knowledge, what would be a good one to at least start off with to kind of act as a primer?
I would say understand occult anatomy through George W. Carey, God, Man, Word Made Flesh. I would say read Thomas H. Burgoyne, Light of Egypt. Now, they are pretty dense reads, so I believe to get a good grasp on the science of light, it would be good to, sure, Yukteswar, the Holy Science, The Wheels of Life. That's a really good book to understand how your chakras correspond to different realms of the psyche. I'd recommend Eliphas Levi to understand the law of analogy, and I'd also recommend C.C. Zane to get a good grasp of the laws of correspondence, for sure.
Nice. Here's another one. So naturally, when it comes to delving into the spiritual realm, many times it often says you need to get into the emotional, which obviously is a really big step there, and an important one too. But here's one to think about. Does the logical side have any place in the spiritual realm? Oftentimes we talk about the feminine, right? Which obviously is a big important. But then, of course, in order for creation to fully realize, it's not just the feminine aspect that plays into the whole play. The mat. Sorry, did I
Sure.
say feminine or masculine?
Yeah, I totally
Point.
no, I totally understand your question. You
Yeah.
have to have the logical to map out the cosmology for the divine inspiration intuition to fit into. You have to have a logical map of your universe, a logical understanding of where you are. And if you understand that everything is endued with reason by nature, that Eliphas Levi says even the insane are acting under a certain law or aspect of reason. The whole universe is devised through reason, and that reason principle is very necessary because when you start acting unreasonable, then you start becoming demented.
Beautiful. Yeah. Next one is what's a good way to kind of help reconcile the realness of the inner planes? Oftentimes, when people tend to go within, we're always taught that the inner world within our minds is just not real. Like it's made up. It's so when going within, what's a good way to kind of
Yeah.
approach
Investigate
or reconcile?
investigate the properties of the inner plane by becoming lucid. Next time you become lucid, whenever you're given the opportunity, investigate the surroundings. Tap on the walls. Open the drawers. Investigate the realm. Soak in the realness of it. Feel your body. Feel what body you're in. Recognize, become aware. And also, once you're doing visualization exercises, you'll be able to see what you're able to conjure versus what you're not. So when you receive an image from beyond, you'll know what it is because you know that you couldn't have done it yourself. So part of hermetic training sometimes is also to see what you can do, to know what you can't do.
Beautiful. And I know you've covered it quite extensively, even both even in this presentation and previous ones. Um, to kind of just put it in a nutshell, what are some good practices or good exercises to pretty much just start going within, like to start seeing the light within? How do how does the initiator or how does the student here
Yeah.
um, begin to kind of kind of recognize that they're making progress, that they are going in the right direction? Because many times these things can be very clouded, right? As per, the when it comes to mysticism, sure, we have the mystic fire, which is clear and bright, and you can see it clearly in the dark. But of course, you have the more negative aspect of it, which is the mist, the fog. Where are we going? Are we bumping into random buildings? Are we actually making our way? Are we even on the road at all?
Yeah. No, great question. So one way to do that is to practice the Tibetan exercise of turning the light around. And turning the light around is basically taking your attention, which is placed on external things usually, or external places, whether in the mind, or in the feeling, or in the future, your day-to-day activity, and to still continue with that, but to place that attention, that arc of attention, place it here. Place it on the self. Turn the light around. Feel into your nervous system on a day-to-day basis because the nervous system is where it's connected magnetically to the higher spheres and higher planes. So by placing your attention on the nervous system, you're actually placing your attention on the portal of which your consciousness is emanating from or being received to. Once you do that, you can actually get beyond the portal and start being able to travel onto the mental plane by detaching from being ultra connected to the physical plane. And then you're able to acquire the ability to be at one place and attentive while consciously working on a task attentively. You can be working on a specific task to attain information or to accomplish a goal. While you're doing something else in the physical, you also have an intention or mission, some type of nudge or effort to be able to take the next step to actually do something. So that's one main thing to understand is to know, to dare, and to will, and to be silent. And that basically means act with the knowledge of yourself, know who you are within your actions, and know that if your actions are aligned with the highest truth, that they will be created, they will be manifested, and you will be able to move mountains, per se. Moving mountains means all obstacles will just separate for you, because you're working through the invisible factor, right? A lot of people are only working on things from a physical mindset. Even just having a drop of the spiritual knowledge and seeing things from the invisible perspective, your actions are already, you're already committing a process of alchemy, because just with that belief system that you're not matter, that you're beyond matter, you've already shifted how you behave, and that behavior reflects into all aspects of your life. So I would say the most important thing is to have a very high, solid ideal that you wake up with and go to sleep with, that's always subtly in the background of your consciousness. And let it be of the highest truth and of high voltage and of high inspirational value, and let it be a benefit to all, because we're all connected and we are all here to learn, to cooperate, and to understand what we are as opposed to what we are not, understand the difference between good and evil, and to choose good for goodness sake alone, right? As Eliphas Levi said, justice wasn't existed just because some guy in the clouds decided, hey, let's have justice. Justice exists because justice exists behind the divine principles. The divine principles of love and wisdom exist, and because they exist, we create and we utilize them. So, as we can see, things trickle down from their highest point, more subtle, and we need more concrete images, and that's the power of cryptograms. So another thing would be look up what a cryptogram is and learn how to distill information from the holy cryptograms and understand it from an anagogical level, that it's not just the sacred secretion, it's not just the sun on the ecliptic. There's higher truths embedded within the symbols.
Beautiful. Yeah, one thing I wanted to also put in is, it's kind of a part of what you said, and is this. So remember, to everyone, the man who says he can and the man who says he can't are both correct. For faith can move mountains, and where there's a will, there's a way. All right.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love that quote. Goes great with what we're saying.
Yeah. All right. Don't have any more questions written down here
That's
for
awesome.
one.
Yeah, that was a good one.
All right. Yeah, it was, man. That was beautiful.
Yeah, appreciate it. All right, well, see y'all next time.